Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's presentation. This is actually part two of why people don't heal, but you can. Today, we're going to discuss the 7 pillars of health and the healing cycle. Exciting stuff. However, got to take care of some, official stuff before we get started. As you know, the information in this presentation is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified medical professional, and it is not intended as medical advice. This presentation is, however, a sharing of my knowledge and information based on my research, as well as my experiences and those of the experts that have contributed. I encourage you to make your own healthcare decisions based upon your research and in partnership with your qualified healthcare team. A little bit about me. I am first and foremost a mommy. I have been an educator for over 25 years. I've also been a doula, childbirth educator, colon hydrotherapist, heart math coach, and also a doctorate of naturology. Most importantly, I'm an advocate for you. I am an integrated wellness mentor, and I focus on helping caregivers who are unconsciously sacrificing their personal health, mental health, emotional health, and well-being to the point of exhaustion or even hospitalization. I teach people like you, yes, you, savvy, selfless, strong people, how to heal themselves, body, mind, heart, and soul, so that they can better serve the ones that you love from an empowered position of joy, health, and wealth. Before we begin, I want you to reflect on what type of caregiver are you? And when I say caregiver, I use that term very loosely because even if it's just a pet in your home, you are a caregiver. Or perhaps it is the people on your job that you give some kind of care to. They may not be related to you. They may not be very close to you. It could be people in your church, people in your community. The people that you interact with, those are the people that you give love and care to, consciously or subconsciously. And my question is, are you an Atlas caregiver where you feel like you have the world on your shoulders? Or have you developed balance to become a resilient caregiver? Now, before continuing with today's presentation, I'm going to review what we did we had our presentation 2 weeks ago for part one. And we had looked at some of the statistics. Oh, horrible, horrible statistics. 75% of Americans overweight or obese. 1 out of 3 diabetic or pre-diabetic. And actually, I've heard a more recent statistic that it may be as much as 50% of us that are pre-diabetic or diabetic. 1 out of 4 adults with one or more medication. And I think that that's actually an understatement again, because most of the people that I've talked to, and just in general in passing, they're taking something, even if it's just aspirin or Motrin for some kind of ache or pain or inflammation, or the doctors tell them, oh, take this to avoid heart disease or whatever. 1 out of 3 will develop cancer in his or her life. 1 out of 4 heart disease. And yet America is ranked number 35 worldwide, even though we spend more on healthcare than most countries combined. We summarized last time that this is due to the fact that our quote-unquote healthcare system is actually a disease maintenance system with 5 main characteristics. It's over-specialized, it's reactive as opposed to being proactive. So we spend most of our money trying to patch up and put Band-Aids on the symptoms as opposed to really searching for the root cause. We tend to create an environment or a culture of distressed victims where we're just waiting for something to happen. And we constantly have this view that someone or something is going to fix us. We also have a system that's based on scientific arrogance that ignores what I refer to as simply ignoring nature's supremacy, meaning that God designed this beautiful body, this beautiful spirit, to operate according to certain guidelines. And if we adhere to those guidelines, we have a pretty okay life, you know? But when we decide that we want to jump out of a 10-foot story building to test the laws of gravity, we end up splat on the sidewalk because we are simply ignoring nature's supremacy, thinking that we can patch it up and we can do better than God's design. And last but not least, we said that our system tends to be generic and tends to look at putting people into certain categories with certain labels and giving everyone the same size for whatever particular quote unquote label they may have. And we talked about the fact that when I have, say, 5 different people who are coming to me who are diabetic, working with those 5 different people can have 5 totally different plans of actions. Mother Nature comes to the rescue. And with Mother Nature, we are able to look at the fact that we are simply looking at trying to maintain balance, trying to get back to being coherent with body, mind, heart, and soul. Whenever the disease process begins, and when I say disease, I'm not talking about quote unquote the final label of diabetes or hypertension or cancer or anything. I'm talking about the early beginnings where there is dis-ease, where there is a discomfort and a symptomology. And we have been trained that as soon as a symptom pops up, we've got to slap it in place. We've got to cover it up, slather it, congest it, something to cover up that symptom. When in reality, that symptom or that disease is simply the body's way of trying to regain and maintain homeostasis. When we attain natural balance, then those simple symptoms disappear. Natural balance can be disturbed by a variety of different stressors that we may not have the resilience to be able to respond adequately to. Those stressors can be malnutrition, because as you know, the irony of being in America is that we are the most overfed yet undernourished nation in the world. So there can be malnutrition, there can be a variety of emotional stress, there can be a toxic overload. And when we talk about toxins, these toxins are not just the physical toxins, you know, where we talk about the chemicals from our cleaning products and the chemicals that are in the environment. But toxins, I like to encourage us to think more broadly about the concept of toxicity, to include things such as mental toxicity. What are the thoughts that we are holding on to and making one with our persons? What are the emotions that we're anchoring ourselves to? All types of toxins. When I lead people on cleanses and fasts, I challenge them to not only think about a cleanse or a fast as eliminating certain quote unquote foods from their plate, but thinking about even eliminating the internet. My kids are always amazed. They ask me, what did you guys do before the internet? As if life evolves around the internet, that it is the be all and end all and source of life. In any case, I digress. Remember, we said that it's not so much about the stressor, but whether or not we have the resilience, the capacity to respond adequately. And that depends on whether or not we have sufficient resources, whether or not we have what we call bank. If you have $1 million in the bank and you get a flat tire, no biggie. You've got money to cover the flat tire. The same thing is true with our organ systems. Do they have sufficient reserve, sufficient energy, sufficient integrity, or have they been compromised? And so we go through what I term the phases of disease progression. Remember, the first phase was about being exposed to a stressor. And if we're not able to adequately respond to that stressor, the disease may progress to the level of fatigue, where there's an overaccumulation of this toxic burden, whether it be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And you're trying to eliminate, you're trying to deal with it, but you just don't have the reserve capacity. And so it leads to fatigue. Then, if you haven't nipped it in the bud at that point, it will continue to progress to the point of acute excretion, where your body's trying to deal with all of this stuff and it starts to push it out of the system. And that excretion can come in terms of angry eruptions. That's an emotional excretion. Rashes, pimples, and all of these things are perfect environments for the buildup of yeasts and parasites and bacteria. The disease continues to progress to the level of being what we call subacute, where we become inflamed, on fire. Inflammation literally means swelling. Anything that has an itis, whether it be arthritis, bursitis, colitis, meningitis, whatever it is, there's some type of inflammation. And that is the body's coping mechanism to envelop the area of distress and to make it less concentrated and less toxic to our beings, and to activate the immune system, because inflammation acts as a beacon to the immune system. Hey guys, over here, over here. You know, it's like when the police go in and they cordon off in certain area and say, okay, everybody stand back. We're dealing with stuff here, whether it be an accident or a crime, whatever it may be. The body does the same way with inflammation. If this continues to progress, you become chronic in your inflammation, and then things become more concretized, and you have dispositions such as gallstones, kidney stones, coagulations, clotting in the blood, cysts, fatty tissue excess, cellulite, things of that nature. And these start to block the flow of energy, creating even further imbalances, not only physiologically, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What I want to stress here is that it's not simply a matter of cutting out whatever those dispositions are, cutting out the fatty tissue, cutting out the gallstones, cutting out the kidney stones, the coagulations. The real challenge is to go upstream to find out what led us to this point. Because remember, these dispositions didn't occur overnight. The same as cancer. Every single one of us has cancer cells, but it is a process, a disease process that allows the cancer cells to evolve to a certain point where you have neoplasms. Now, that's me getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's go back. So the next stage is that things escalate to becoming unable to be sufficiently concretized in one area, and things start to spread. And there becomes a breakdown of the cell's mitochondria. And the inflammation of the cell becomes even more deadly, because that imbalance translates to the interior of the cell and wreaks havoc with the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse. It's where you generate your energy. And these lead to all kinds of subtle, unpredictable nuances within not only the physiology, but remember, we said that all of the systems of the person are interconnected. And when you have a damming of the energy due to physiological depositions, physiological blockages, that also gums up the pathways emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. This leads to degeneration because there's a blockage. The energy can't flow, remember? And this degeneration can be in the form of things like neuropathy. A lot of what happens even with our diabetic people is that the energy can't flow. The circulation of the blood does not flow. And so different parts of the body become diseased. First, they start to break down, degenerate, and ultimately they start to not function, which can lead to amputations or even things like sterility because the energy, the nutrients do not flow to the vital organs. And ultimately, for some people, this leads to neoplasms or the overgrowth, the proliferation of cancerous cells that start to replicate without any kind of boundaries, without any kind of restrictions, and they start to take over and replace the healthy cells. So we said that part of understanding why people don't heal and to claim our power of making sure that we do not become those statistics is to divorce ourselves from what is termed the nightmare of yet, just waiting for the last straw to break the camel's back. I like to emphasize that when you look at this poor little camel here, which is symbolic of your health, my health, this poor camel is being weighed down by all of these different stressors, from chemical to working at home, working too hard without proper rest, without proper nourishment, without taking proper breaks. Things such as air pollution, yeast, mold, nutritional deficiencies, not enough love. Are you getting enough hugs? Are you giving enough hugs? Are you smiling enough? Are you claiming your joy? Or are you waiting for something to give you that joy? All of these things lead to an environment that you are just waiting for that one little straw to go boop on top of the poor camel and you just fall apart. And so this saying here, why did one straw break the camel's back? Well, it wasn't that one straw. The secret was the millions of straws that were underneath that last straw. So let us look at how do we reverse that disease process? How do we activate and support our healing cycle, which is the precursor design for our being? When we were created by God, we were created with the healing cycle. Last time in part 1, we talked about the fact that healing is the norm. Think about how many times you've cut yourself, you've knocked yourself somewhere. Maybe some of you have broken a bone or two. And guess what? You've healed as long as certain obstructions weren't in the way and as long as you provided sufficient nutrients, you healed. Therefore, the challenge is not a matter of if there is a healing cycle. The challenge is understanding what that healing cycle is, acknowledging that healing cycle, and supporting that healing cycle from a holistic perspective. Remember, we are constantly stressing the importance of mind, body, heart, and soul. The first step in our integrative wellness model is assess. Don't guess, assess. Lab tests, not best guess. Doing proper assessments. And these assessments are not only on the physical plane with lab testing and also looking at certain symptomology charts, but also on a more mental and emotional level to take time to journal, to reflect, and ask the spirit that lies within you, the all-knowing spirit that lies within you, what's going on here? Now, the question is to ask, don't tell, to be humble and serve, not to be a dictator and a know-it-all, because a lot of times we go into the spirit and we say, oh, what's going on? And then we have a whole agenda of, well, I know it's this, I know it's this, I know it's this. Ask the question and then be quiet. And in that quiet, you will hear the answer. Now, I know some of you are probably like me, hard-headed, and for many things, it's a journey for me to go in to ask that question and wait for the answer and all that kind of good stuff. And so I tend to go more in the direction of the hardcore lab tests, to show me certain imbalances. And then I kind of backtrack from there. So if I see that there is instability or imbalance within the liver, then I can backtrack and say, okay, that correlates to this emotion and this kind of mental play in my mind and blah, blah, yak, yak. What I want to emphasize here is assess. Go into this process as a seeker of truth, as a detective, as a scientist, and begin with asking the question, why, how, and not just looking for a label of what. The next step is to plan, because whenever you do this assessment, you will get some kind of reporting system back that says, okay, this is off balance, this is off balance, this is off balance, this is good, this is not so good. Now you have to take the time to plan what is it that you're going to address first, second, third, and what are going to be your mechanizations of assessing whether or not this is working, right? And remember the old adage, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So many of us, we get back the report and we say, okay, I got it under control. I'll take care of it. And we figure that somehow the cosmos is just going to orient itself to handle our issues just willy-nilly. We've got to put in the time and the effort to actually make a plan. And then what I tell people is the first step of that plan is detoxification. A lot of us want to go in and put in the fresh paint, want to move into new furniture, put the nice fancy pictures on the wall, but the place is crap. You got to scrape off the old paint. You got to take off the trash before you can start to move to the next section, which is to rejuvenate, to start to rebuild and to nurture. And I have to emphasize here that in actuality, all of these things kind of happen at the same time. It's just that you may give more emphasis to one area more so than the others at any given point in time. However, all of these processes are occurring simultaneously to one degree or the other. And once again, to emphasize that when we talk about even detoxifying and rejuvenating, it has to be done mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So start to analyze, what thoughts do I need to get rid of? What emotions do I need to get rid of? What thoughts do I need to really energize and activate in my life? What emotions do I need to energize in my life and to give more attention to? And then the last step, which is the most challenging, is to maintain the good stuff that we're doing. and to always loop back and reassess, reflect, and contemplate as we go through. The key to doing all of this is what I refer to and others have referred to as the 7 pillars of health. Because a lot of people want to start with the pyramid, all this good stuff up here that looks so juicy and sexy, and you hear all this stuff in the news. Oh, digestive issues. Oh, we're going to work on healing the gut. Oh, we're going to work on blood sugar balance. We're going to work on adrenals, the thyroid, the immune, blah, 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 blah. But guess what? None of that will mount up to a hill of beans if your foundation, your pillars are weak. I spend so much time with my clients dealing with the 7 pillars, because the reality is that for most of the things that are going wrong in our lives, if we focus on strengthening these 7 pillars, the rest of the stuff will resolve itself miraculously, even. Focusing on stress management, movement, our relationships, our self-love, nutrition, sleep. Oh my God, I cannot overemphasize the importance of sleep. And your core values. Where is your spirit? What is your passion? What is your reason for being? What gets you up in the morning? What takes you from point A to point B? These are the 7 things that need to be addressed in order for you to heal. And because most people are not addressing these 7 pillars, they are not healing. There's no lotion, motion, potion that can supersede the importance of, say, for instance, sleep. I don't care how many adaptogens, ashwagandha, rhodiola, licorice, this, that, tara what. Nothing can replace the importance and the efficiency and the nourishment that you can get from sleep. There is no pill out there that can replace the power of sleep. And the same is true with all of these 7 pillars. There is no pill that can supersede their importance. Remember what I said, simply ignoring nature's supremacy, sins are based on people who do not want to acknowledge the importance of these 7 pillars. People who want to be able to justify their actions, their lifestyles, and to take the morning after pill. So how can you heal? I say start by being selfish. Yes, yes, yes. It is all about you. I challenge you to take charge of your health. You can do so in a variety of ways. Some of the ways that we can assist you is sign up for our free video series, Creating a Healthier You, and for our health newsletters. RSVP to attend our wellness sessions. Make an appointment for a preliminary assessment and consultation if you would like. Most importantly, whatever you do, whomever you choose to be a part of your healthcare team, take time to plan, because remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And ask yourself, what are your baby steps? Sometimes less is more. Many of us get overwhelmed trying to do everything. Like, oh my God, Michelle, everything is wrong with me. I got to take care of my adrenals. I got to take care of my this. I got to do it. Slow down. Breathe. And take it slowly. Remember how we were brought into this world as little babies. And we didn't just jump up off of the bed and start running. No. We kind of waddled on the bed first. We rolled over. And then slowly we pushed up. So then we started to crawl. And then we wobbled up. And we took 1 or 2 steps and boom, down on our little pamper butts. Take little steps, one by one. But make a plan, an action plan. And to think about what is going to be your paradigm shift. That was our action plan the last time. Now, this time, for this session, your challenge is to identify your health care team. Remember, the most important person is you. That's why you are right here in the center. You are the captain of your ship, the master of your fate. You go into all of these offices and you tell them, this is about me. I am in charge here. This is my life. And at the same time, realize that all of these people can be supports to you. I want you to take time to identify who is part of your team. Maybe your pastor, maybe your best friend, maybe someone that you have yet to know. Maybe it's going to be a specific kind of healthcare provider that you're going to seek out to assist you in this journey. But identify your team, because together, each accomplishes more. And remember that this is not about being cute. This is about taking charge. And some of that is acknowledging that we all need a little help every now and then. Break away from becoming a statistic and remember that two roads diverged in the woods. One, I took the one less traveled, and that has made all the difference.